The company was, you may recall, founded as Garden Source. And my concept was to develop collections of historic garden furnishings. And the first market, I had a showroom, a little showroom, 800 square feet up in the design center. And the guy who was making the winter tour collection for me failed to get the samples for market. And so here I am with an 800 square foot showroom, and Bob Gruenberg and Bill DiPaolo expecting that I was going to have a show. And so I, at that time, had an antique shop in Atlanta and a garden furniture store. And so I literally went down there with my truck and loaded stuff up from the antique store and the garden store and brought it up here and put it in that space. And with no prices on anything. But I had a willow bed with kudzu vines all over it. I had bent willow, I had hickory furniture, I had old bird houses. All I did was just decorate the room with what I was selling in Atlanta. And the first person that came by looked at this big birdhouse and said, "How much is that birdhouse?" I said, $200. They went on. The next crowd that came by asked about the same damn birdhouse. "How much is that birdhouse?" $150. No takers. Third time somebody asked me, I said $100, and they said, "I'll take 6." And so that's the way the company started. Literally, I gauged what somebody was willing to pay for the stuff with no prices, because all I was doing was holding the space. Well, the end of the story is the next market, the guy, we have all the samples, everything's ready, but people by then had recognized that I had all this interesting, funny stuff. And so I put the showroom together and I kept the funny stuff and the winter tour collection. And it all sold. And the reception was great. And that literally, I founded this company to act as a sales and marketing company for the manufacturer who was making the winter tour collection. Because as it turned out, not only did he not know anything about sales and marketing, he didn't really know anything about manufacturing. All he had was, he was a CPA. And so that's, the next thing that happened is I am in the factory directing the factory. And we have all this off-fall on the floors. And so I don't want to throw it away because it's beautiful reeded steel, all kind of really pretty metal. And so I put together a bunch of candlesticks, all components would fit each other. So I put it all in a duffel bag, and when I started on my late summer tour to collect my garden furniture orders, that's how that market works. I took along my bag, and the first stop was the Crate and Barrel in Massachusetts, in Cambridge, where Lon Habkirk, who, I don't know whether you know him, he was the architect of the original furniture collection. He was the merchant. And so we work out our orders for the winter tour collection, and then I say to Lon, "Let me show you this stuff." And I put together 3 or 4 candlesticks and put them on the table. And he looked at them and said, "Hold on just a minute." And he goes to his office and gets a beautiful twisted bird cage. We take one of the candlesticks apart, put the bird cage in the middle, put it back together, and there it sits. And I say, "Oh man, that's a great candlestick." He said, No, Robert, I don't want a candlestick, I want a lamp." And I said, He says, we get more money for lamps. Don't want to sell candlesticks. So he says, can you do that? I said, sure. How much would it cost? Well, I was pretty good at all that stuff, so I calculated and I added enough to be sure I hadn't made a mistake. And he said, well, if you can do it for that, I'll give you an order. And I said, give me the order. So he gives me an order, not for one, not for two, but 300 pieces. And I'm thinking, damn, what a genius I am. And that was the first lamp that this company made at his request. So 2 weeks or 3 weeks later, I'm at North Point in San Francisco at Williams-Sonoma, and I was selling the garden furniture to Gardner's Eden. And Corey Strait, who had worked for me at Storehouse, was the president of Pottery Barn. And I asked her to get me an appointment with the accessory buyer. And his name, I'll think of it in a minute. At any rate, I get my order for the furniture and I go over to the Pottery Barn area, and Scott Donlin was the guy. And Scott's waiting on me in another meeting room. And so I get my bag. I literally was carrying this stuff on the airplane. Now they would arrest you for having pipe bombs. But so I get my bag out and I put together 3 or 4 of those things, and he looks at them and he says, wait just a minute. And he says, got something in the office. He brings back a penny-foot candlestick, the simplest kind of candlestick. He said, can you make that? I said, sure. And he says, well, if you can make it, can you deliver 400 in 30 days? I said, yes. And he says, well, if you can, I will give you an order. And I said, give me the order. He gives me an order, not for one, not for two, but 3,000 pieces. So here I am, supposed to be selling historic garden furnishings, and I'm selling lamps and candlesticks. And I'm thinking, man, what a genius I am. And these 2 guys literally put me in the business that we're in today. And that was the start of the company. But it gets better. The next market, I have all the funny stuff in the showroom. I have the winter tour collection in the showroom. And I had found a guy in North Carolina to make these things that I had sold without really having a good resource. And he was making historic wrought iron stuff for Mazda and people like that. And he had this beautiful chandelier, a chandelier for candles. And so I bring a couple of those and I hang them literally in these trees I bought at the nursery to decorate the showroom. And Lon Habkirk comes by and he says, oh man, that's a really great looking chandelier. I said, yeah, isn't it? And he says, but we need to wire it. It needs to be electric. And so literally, I'm thinking, one more time, boy, what a smart guy I am. And we literally, for the Crate and Barrel, French wired those hand-wrought chandeliers. And that was the first chandelier we made. So when I talk about this company, those are the thoughts that I have, because what everybody has to understand is nobody gets anything done without somebody else. And these guys were critical to the early development of this company. And so, I may be smart, but I ain't that smart.